everyone. It's Henrietta and Heather, and welcome to a Millennial Podcast where we dive deep into the life of our 30s.
We'll discuss our struggles, dreams, relationships, icks, and anything millennials can relate to. Sit back, relax, and let's head on this journey together. We are 30s Unfiltered. Welcome to 30s Unfiltered, where we dive into the real and raw experiences of navigating our 30s. Today, we're talking about something deeply personal and transformative: mental health struggles and therapy. Therapy has played a significant role in both of our lives, and we wanted to share our stories and insights with you. Let's start with how we each came to the decision to seek therapy. Henrietta, when was the moment you realized therapy was something you needed?
I think I went through a couple of different moments where I was like, I want to try therapy, because coming from Norway, therapy was always very taboo. So I was never against it, but I was always hesitant. And I was just thinking, the more I got used to the idea, the more I was like, I want to try it. But it's so expensive in LA, so I never pulled the plug because I just simply couldn't afford to. But I was like, okay, I want to try it now. I moved back to Norway in 2019 in August, and I sort of knew I was going to struggle with the transition because I didn't want to move back, but because of visa situations, I had to. I think in November of that year, I started getting depressed. There isn't a lot of availability. It's still, like I said, it's still new in Norway. It's not like how common it is in the States. So there aren't a lot of options. But it wasn't until September of 2020 that I actually began seeing a therapist.
Oh, that's really powerful. For me, the first time I was seeking therapy was when I had stopped working as a nurse over 2 years ago, when I was transitioning into being a stay-at-home mom and, helping my ex with his business. So I went from being super independent to then being dependent on somebody. So I was dealing with insecurity. I didn't know how to navigate everything I was going through. I felt a lot of pressure. I had major anxiety at the time. And I had a ton of guilt of just not earning my own money, and I felt really lost. I knew at that moment I needed help. It was a very distinct moment in my life.
Wow.
Obviously, the first step is knowing when you need therapy or when something is kind of in your space and you know that you need help. And so how did you find the right therapist for you?
Initially, when I moved back to Norway, I talked to my therapist, or I talked to my doctor and said, I know I'm going to struggle because this wasn't part of my plan. I didn't want to move back here. And he talked about cognitive therapy, and he gave me a form that I was supposed to fill out, but I just didn't feel right filling them out based off the questions.
Yeah.
And I decided feeling that it wasn't going to be what I needed, because I don't believe in having to fill in a form to be, I guess, eligible to get therapy. I feel like if you want it, you should be able to get it. My depression was getting worse and my anxiety was getting really bad, and I wasn't talking to anyone about it. So I was like, I need to find my own. I need to actually go to see one in person. And then I just did some research here, and only a few people came up in my hometown, and I messaged the first one I saw because I saw she was closer to my age, and I just figured, she probably just can relate a little bit more. So I messaged her, and then I had a session with her, and we just instantly clicked. And it was literally like a match made in heaven, which is actually, it's not unheard of, but it's not normal to just really get a great match with the first therapist you talk to, So I got really lucky.
That's amazing. I have the same exact story
Yeah.
because I think finding the right fit is so important It's
Yeah.
important to feel comfortable talking to somebody and being vulnerable and open and sharing. And
Mhm.
it's definitely important to find somebody that you are comfortable with. And so I got very lucky that I found somebody in my first try. I was
Mhm.
actually referred to her through a friend. She was telling me about her experiences with her, and I loved the conversations that they would have. I was like, hey, do you think you can refer me to her?
Mhm.
Does she have any openings? And it's just so happened she was within my healthcare network. And so it
Oh,
ended up working out
wow.
that she became my therapist too. I have been talking to her since
So,
2022, and it's been on a very consistent basis. I think
mhm.
I first started out seeing her about like once a month, and then I knew I needed more. So then I started seeing her every other week. And now I see her every week, once a week.
That's so
And
funny that you're
yeah.
doing it that way because I did it the exact opposite way. I did it once a week and then I did it every other week and then I did it like once a month or every 3 weeks. That's
Mhm.
so funny. I mean, yeah.
It just depends on where you're at, right? And because I've had a lot of things happen to me this past year, I've
Yes, you
definitely
have.
needed her. I've
Yeah.
definitely needed her by my side, and she has been there for me. And so, God, just even thinking about it makes me want to cry.
Oh, I feel the same way about my therapist. Like I just love her. The times that she's texted me like like certain things, like I cry too because she's just like had such an impact of, on my life and in my process. And yeah, I've just changed so. I know I see it. I see you.
Hold on, I need a second.
Oh.
Oh
Oh,
God.
literally, therapists are the best. They
Oh
take on so much. They really do. Yeah.
God. Okay. Let's talk about your first session. Were there any surprises or things you didn't expect? I know that the first, like even for me, the first session was awkward. So how was your first session?
I didn't know what to expect. I'm sure most people who go into their first therapy session have no idea what to expect. And you just like wonder, where should I start? Like, what should I begin with? So I started talking about what I needed help with immediately,
Hmm.
which was my depression. And
Right.
so I just told her the story like of what led up to me becoming depressed.
Mm.
And that was, that I had to move from my entire life, uproot my life in LA and go back to Norway, which, is the last place I wanted to live at the time. The first thing she said was because she could just tell, that I just didn't want to be here. That's where my heart was. So she was like, okay, let me just say this right now. Like, I believe you and like I can see that you want to move back. And so if you want that, like you will. And that's it. Like I just want you to know that like I hear you when you say that. Because I was so used to defending everything and like all my life choices. I'm still doing that. But so I was just like in such like defense mode where I was kind of coming in like almost guns blazing and like had this whole like thing that I'm used to saying when people are asking me about it. And she's like I get you. Like you want to move back and like and you will. If you want to, you will. And I was like, okay. Uh okay. Because then I didn't have to like explain it anymore.
Right. I think
Then
that's huge.
yeah, I kind of just felt like,
Just like, okay.
okay, uh, uh, okay. It was just so weird,
Yeah.
but exactly what I needed. And so, and like, I think about that a lot because
It
how
was
does she
like,
know what I needed without even like within like
right.
10 minutes of knowing me? But that is the thing that really stuck with me that she was just on my team.
Right.
You she was
Yeah.
on my side.
What makes it great is like you're present now that you have had those defense mechanisms up. What I hear from you is like you have this new freedom. Your walls are down. You're able to kind of relax.
Mhm.
So my first session, I was super anxious. My body would start shaking. I would start sweating. My heart would be pounding whenever I would share something. But I was also very on the surface. It was hard for me to be open and authentic about what was going on in my life. And honestly, I was embarrassed about sharing how I truly felt. I was
Hmm.
really embarrassed. I was followed by this like cloud of shame that I brought from my younger self based
Right.
off of how, I grew up and around my family and how they made me feel. I had a lot of anxiety that I had to work through. The practice of how to be vulnerable was
Mm.
it was very challenging for me.
How long was the process between when you wanted to go to therapy until you found it and or her and until you had your first session?
I had been wanting to do therapy for a very long time. So I actually initiated the process, but I never got into communication with a good therapist. And also, they kept prolonging the appointment. Appointments would be like 30, 60, 90 days out. And like, I just kind of gave up. When I was going through that transition, I had time and I also had the resources to actually just kind of get things in motion.
Mhm.
And because I got that referral from a friend and because she was independent, the therapist,
Got it.
I was able to kind of just move things along. And so I
Got
just
it.
think it was a kind of right time, right place, right
Mhm.
scenario that everything just kind of fell into place. The next question I have is how has therapy impacted your daily life and your relationships?
With everything.
Mhm.
It's weird because like when people have asked me like what kind of tools I've gotten, I don't really have like a straight answer. Yes, I don't really know how to explain it because from one session to the other, she would tell me that, like she saw a difference in something and I was like, "Oh, I don't think I did anything." Or, I think my biggest thing was just not being able to fully be myself and thinking that things I said wasn't good enough. Yeah, it just kind of changed along the way that I was more vulnerable and more, I guess, confident in my worth because like the words I say are ultimately just like it's just like the inside of me, you know?
Mhm.
I got um into the habit of talking to people about when I have issues or when I'm feeling something, which I never did before. I mean, I did only with like one of my best friends because she forced me to talk. And that's kind of how or when the ball started rolling, but it wasn't until I actually started therapy when I was like, oh, if I don't talk about things, I'll actually get sick, which I did. And then when I did start talking about it, then it just helped.
That's
Mhm.
amazing. And I think that's exactly like what therapy is, right? It's your ability to express yourself and unapologetically be yourself. I think like I've had similar experiences where, you go from session to session and you just learn from your sharing and you
Mhm.
get present and you're more self-conscious, you're more aware of your actions and the way that you react in situations the way that because I would go to my therapist of like, oh my God, I just had this argument, I had this, you know, this fight or whatever. And
Mhm.
then she would kind of dissect it and just be like, okay, this is what they said, this is what you made it mean, and this is how you reacted. And then we would go through steps of like, how can I change, not change, but like, how can I be more aware of my behavior? And how can I be a different way because I know myself not to be like argumentative or, angry and mean.
Mhm.
How can I be more loving in my communication? How can I be more compassionate to other
Mhm.
people? How can I also set boundaries with other people?
Mhm.
And stick up for myself because a lot of the times I was very passive. And so it just didn't work for me. And at the end of the day, I was very unhappy because I just was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll go along
Mhm.
with it. Yeah, sure. No, no problem. But at the end of the day, it was just like, no, I need to put my foot down. I need to say no. I need to do things that are right for me. Actually, right now, one of the things that I'm practicing is more self-compassion. We are the worst critics of ourselves and we beat ourselves up to the ground. And so I
Always.
do that times 20 because I am like a perfectionist. I want things my way. Like, and
Mhm.
if it doesn't go my way, I'm having a full-on breakdown and like just be more compassionate to
Yeah.
myself and just not be so rigid in the things that I plan on doing and just kind of going with the flow. And
Mhm.
also learning to rest more because
Yeah.
I usually work myself until burnout.
Mhm.
That doesn't work. I've been really practicing more self-compassion. I've been practicing having fun. Like I've been practicing just kind of hanging out and just being present in the moment and just knowing like it's not that serious.
Yeah.
It's not that serious. At the end of the day, life is so short and we're all gonna go to the same place anyways. So
Right.
all the
That's
money, all
right.
the things and all the things that you want to get, like it
Doesn't
doesn't really
matter.
matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying when it comes to like things that you are learning to cope with like in a different way, and that's not consuming your mind all day, every day, because you have like 80,000 thoughts a day, and some thoughts are louder than others. That's also something that my therapist taught me. And for me, also one thing that I am still struggling with and still working on is just, you know this about me. I'm a worrier. I worry about everything. And I have been anxious, like I've had anxiety probably my whole life, but like in the 90s, who knew what anxiety was unless it was something very specific, like social anxiety or something like that. People didn't know what that was, right? Like I have dissected certain situations that I've had throughout my life, even when I was a child. Yeah, for example, when I was a kid, I could never sleep over anywhere, and I wanted to have sleepovers all the time. And but whenever I would go to bed, like at my friend's house, as soon as we turned off the lights and like we were like, okay, good night, close our eyes, immediately I was like, oh shit, I can't do this. And I thought that I just was like homesick, that I just couldn't sleep anywhere else. But as an adult, like I can still remember the feeling when I like close my eyes and try to go to sleep. And it was anxiety because it was like the heart pounding and the difficulty of like breathing. And I have had that like and night anxiety or whatever you want to call it for years. But I thought, because like, anxiety can feel like it's a fear because it like your body doesn't really know the difference sometimes. And I'm like, damn, I've had it for almost my entire life. And I don't know, sometimes it just is that I'm worried about something, but I know that it's not an actual, like, it's not something that's like I should be scared of, but it's just like, okay, what am I thinking about? Why is my body reacting? What can I do to try to calm myself down?
Um,
And that's what I've learned.
yeah, and I think with the whole worrying thing, I'm a mom, so I'm constantly worrying, and one of the
Mm.
thoughts that I always have is like it's so bizarre. I will always have thoughts of like accidents can happen or like how he can pass
Yeah.
away or my
Yeah.
son, like like he'll just be taking a shower and then I will for whatever reason I'll start thinking like he's gonna slip and hit his head and like he's gonna
Oh
die.
my God. Yeah.
And then I'll have to like check on him and make sure he's okay and he's like, "Mom, seriously?" And like all of these thoughts that run through my head and then what I've had to do is just be present to the thoughts, take some deep
Mhm.
breaths, tell myself, okay, that's not really happening. I'm just
Mhm.
making up stories, and those stories are making me so emotional. I'm worrying about dishes that are not even dirty yet. I always tell myself, don't worry about dishes
Yep.
that are not even dirty yet. And so,
Literally, my therapist have said that to me so
yeah.
many times because I do the same exact thing. Like you remember when I was
Mhm.
flying back to LA one time and well, actually it was when I was moving back and for some reason I was worried about something like on the like pertaining to the traveling, for months in advance, months, and I couldn't sleep. And she was like, has it happened yet? I'm like, no. But she's like, why are you worried? Like, why are you are literally losing sleep over something that hasn't even happened yet. You don't know what's gonna happen. I'm like, yeah, so I get that. And those thoughts, I have those like for my parents,
Yeah.
even like accidents. Like my dad used to commute, he commuted from one town to another for 30 years. And I drove way more than him in way crazier traffic. But I was like, what if, yeah, I'm the same
Mhm.
way. It's crazy.
Yeah. Another thing was learning to cope with my anxiety and just dealing with those bodily sensations. You know, excitement and anxiety have the same feeling. It's like the same
Yes.
feeling. And so I've had to trick my mind and tell myself, I'm excited. In moments that I'm like super nervous and anxious, I've had to tell myself, I'm excited. This is the same thing. I'm excited because, I get clammy hands. I'm like, my heart's racing. I start shaking. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. Another strategy that I've practiced with therapy is being mindful. Mindful and journaling's helped a lot. Practicing gratitude, that's been super helpful.
Mhm.
And just being more present to my thoughts and managing my thoughts more effectively.
hmm Another thing that she told me that I will never forget was you are not your situation.
Mhm.
And that was such a like eye-opening thing for me. And that truly was like a profound statement because that's how I felt. I was so ashamed over the fact that I was back home because I came from like living in LA for so many years. I lived in New York. Like did the whole like, you know, the big city lives and like that's I didn't want to leave it. And so the fact that I now was home, I was just like I felt like the biggest failure. I felt like everyone knew, everyone just like was inside my head all the time. They knew what I was thinking. So it was like I had, like it was on my forehead or something, but obviously it wasn't. But yeah, she was just like, you need to separate yourself from your situation because like you are not a reflection of your situation. It just happens to be like where you're at and you just have to deal with it. But like you're not you're not your situation. And I was like, oh wow.
No, yeah,
That
that's
I
huge.
didn't think about that. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
yes, it could be two different things. And also that she told me that a lot of the things that I said was very surface level. And I mean, it was like things that I talked about that was like deep, but she said it sounds like you're talking about the weather. And I'm like, I don't know how else to say these things. Like I
Mhm.
was talking from like, my heart about difficult things, but I guess the way I said it was just not, I don't know, it wasn't what she
Expressive, maybe.
expected.
Mhm.
Huh?
Maybe not as expressive.
Yeah, something like that. And then I didn't understand what she meant. And I don't know how many sessions in between from the one when she said that until the next one when she was like, like when you're saying these things, like I can tell that you're here now. Like I like you're here now when you're saying these things. And I'm like, where was I before?
In La La Land, girl.
Yeah, right. No, but she was like, you're more present in yourself and like the things you're saying. And I'm like, okay. And
Hmm.
I couldn't tell. I didn't feel a difference. Like now maybe I feel more of a difference, but like in that setting from like the one session to the other, I was like, I don't know what I did differently, but I guess like slowly I was just like knocking down the walls a little bit, pew
Yeah.
pew. Because I had so many walls up before. I mean, I still have walls up when it comes to like um dating and men,
Right.
but it's helping. Like I had like the Great Wall of China before.
Yeah.
So
No, that's so
it's
funny.
helping.
Yeah. I think, at like again, it's like as you go through therapy and you start, right? Because this is the
Mhm.
amazing part. It's like you start opening up and you start sharing, and then you start sharing with your friends and your family, and then you start being more aware, more self-conscious about, who you
Mhm.
are, and then you start to become more confident in who you are, and then it's like easier to share yourself and like for people
Mhm.
to fall in love with you with the real you.
Right.
And then it's just like this whole thing of self-acceptance and just being okay with
Yes.
where you are. And
Yeah.
I love that she shared, well, she opened you up to you are not your circumstances. The
Hmm.
circumstances are just things that you're dealing with. It has nothing
Hmm.
to do with who you are as a person, your character, nothing. It's just things
Right.
that we all deal with, and everybody has different circumstances. And
Yeah.
life can look amazing one day and then can be complete shit the next day. We just don't know what's going to happen. And that's
Yeah.
like the beauty of life, right? Where we just have to be present moment by moment and just live day by day because that's literally all that we have. So, lastly, what advice would you give to someone considering therapy but feeling hesitant?
Do it. You should try it. And I also say, you need to kind of shop around for your therapist a little bit because if you don't like the first one you meet, then don't get discouraged and don't think it's not for you. Because I've had friends both here in Norway and in LA who've, they talk to someone and they're like, it wasn't a match. Like, I don't think I like therapy. Or they haven't gone to the right type of therapist. Maybe they've gone to a psychiatrist when they needed a therapist, or vice versa. If they really needed a psychologist and they went to a therapist. And it really depends on what your needs are and how willing and open you are to even begin because you cannot force anyone to go to therapy. I've tried. I've
Go
tried.
to therapy. You need
I
it.
no, but I forced my mom to go because sorry, mom, but because I was like her working,
Yeah.
yeah, like therapist when I really needed it myself and I was in it and I was like very depressed and anxious at the time and I'm like, you cannot talk to me about this. You need to go see your own therapist. And she did, and I know that she was happy that she did. And then I tried to force my dad to go and he wasn't ready. So he never went.
Yeah.
So, and I said that to my therapist too. Like, I need them to go because, a lot of the sessions I talked about my parents. Of
Mhm.
course, that's what you do. And she was like, yes, they need it, but they're not going to get anything out of it if they don't want to go and they're not ready to go. So then I just accepted it and then I stopped asking and slash telling him to go.
Yeah.
If you are leaning more towards like you want to go, try it out and don't get discouraged from like one session. Just keep going and then know that it's worth it. But like you need to be actually ready and willing to put in the work.
Absolutely. That is excellent advice. And I'd say don't be afraid to take that first step. And therapy is a safe space where you can explore your feelings without judgment. And
Mhm.
it's okay to take your time to find the right therapist and go at your own pace. Well, we really love it. And we think it's very
Mhm.
important to go.
Mhm.
And, everyone is different. But these are the amazing things that we've gotten out of it. So we just want to share it with you guys and hope that it can make a difference for somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any final words?
The more you normalize therapy and just going to therapy, talking about like my therapist said this, or I had this conversation, or, just having therapy being a normal topic of conversation, that has become, I mean, a huge factor in whether people go or not. That was, probably one of the deciding factors for me that I wanted to go because I went from thinking just like how I grew up that you only go to therapy if you have like a serious issue. And if you do, that's also like highly recommended. Of course, you shouldn't go and like keep all these things inside if you have a serious issue. But also, like, if you don't and you just want to talk to someone, it is honestly like one of the best things you can do. Just talk about it, normalize it, and that has been a game changer, I think, for my whole circle of friends and it's not like a bad word. It's not like Voldemort,
Therapy.
just say it. Therapy. Exactly. Just say it.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, that's completely true. I had a friend, I was talking to her the other day, and she was like, yeah, I decided to go and see my therapist again because you were talking about your therapist and just how great it was. And so I was like, oh, I should go talk to my therapist again. Like, I should
Yeah.
reopen that. And so
Hmm.
also, I wanted to mention therapy is different from psychiatry.
Hmm.
Psychiatry is where people can prescribe medications to you. And I think I want to say majority of the time, after you have a session with a psychiatrist, they're more likely to prescribe you medications. And so do what you want, but also just be aware of what you're getting into, who's the
Yeah.
person you're going to see, and what is their specialty. Like if you do need medications, you do, but I would just get multiple opinions if you are going
Mhm.
to start any medications.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that as well.
And also nothing wrong with being on medication. I have plenty of friends who are on a variety of medication. For them, like it's been a lifeline. So, there's nothing wrong with taking medication if you need it.
Absolutely.
But don't be scared if, you're like, oh, maybe I need to take some medication. Don't be scared because it's definitely not taboo. It's if it saves your life, then why shouldn't you take it? You know?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And again, you have the power to say no and not do it. So
Right.
it's all up to you. It's your life. But
Yeah.
just know the difference.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story, Henrietta. And I acknowledge you for being vulnerable and sharing yourself with me and the world.
You
And
too.
thank you. And I also get your commitment to spreading the word about therapy to the community. So thank you for partnering with me.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right, guys. I hope our conversation today encourages you to seek support as a powerful step toward growth and healing. Share your experiences and remember that you're not alone in your journey. Thank you for tuning in to 30s Unfiltered. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you next week.
Bye. Peace out.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for listening. We hope you got some takeaways from today's episode.
You can also follow us on Instagram and YouTube at 30s Unfiltered or email us at 30sunfiltered@gmail.com.
Please leave us a like, comment, and subscribe to our channels. See you next time.